Hello and welcome to the first episode of Kickstart Connections for 2025. I'm your host, Lucinda Underwood. In the studio with me today is my wonderful co-host, Marc Boudreau of B&V Media. Hi, Marc.
Hi, Lucy. How you doing?
Good. It's good to be back.
It's 2025, and we're very excited. I mean, I think we actually only did one episode last year, the two of us. I just pulled up.
We did a couple,
computer.
I think.
We did a couple. We did 7 total, and we wanted to do a lot more.
We did.
And we kind of tried to do more spotlights on businesses, and we were both quite busy.
Yeah, which is a good thing.
It's a good thing, but we do want to be deliberate with this year and offer some insight into what we're doing, talk about the industry at large, still have on guests, probably not as frequent, maybe once every month or 2 months, but really focusing on you and I having great conversations about marketing, about what we're doing.
Yeah.
And
because we have these conversations all the time.
We do.
It's just actually taking the time to sit and record while we're having these conversations.
Yes, we
right?
might as well record it. When I say that, you're having these conversations, you might as well record them. So very excited. We're going to do bi-weekly episodes for 2025. Hold us to it, audience, because we're making it happen.
Yep.
So this first episode, 2025, I don't know how it got here.
It's wild.
It's like every year.
What was it you said earlier? Millennium was 25 years ago.
It was 25 years ago. And the best part about growing up is time goes even faster.
Oh, man, doesn't
it's exponential.
It does.
But what can you
It really
do?
is.
We're excited for the new year. We've got some big plans. One of them, of course, being more consistent and going sort of a different direction with the focus on you and I and our businesses for 2025.
Yeah, some more kind of just, storytelling around our businesses because we're both in very exciting times in our businesses as well. Things are happening. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it'd be good to talk about for sure.
Yeah, no question. And I mean, I think I've said this a million times, but what does B&V Media do? We make podcasts for businesses to use as marketing.
Right.
We need to have an internal podcast.
That talks about marketing.
Exactly. We've had iterations. I remember we did B&V Brunch several years ago. That didn't really take off. And then we were going to do, so you want to start a podcast. Once again, you get busy. Things kind of fall by the wayside. And then we started Kickstart Connections, the kind of second iteration of it.
Yep.
And that went sort of somewhere, but now it's like, all right, now we need to really put a focus on where do we want this to go in 2025?
And an important point with that as well, the industry has also evolved a lot in that time. Right.
Yes.
And I mean, we're gonna get into this. So, we've got a few things we're going to talk about on this episode. We are going to be talking about the types of businesses and industries that can benefit from podcasting because it's becoming more of a really important tool to have in your marketing kit. Right. Yeah. So we'll get into that. That's actually the last topic. What I would like to do first, and we've kind of mentioned a couple of bits here in the intro, but let's just catch up on the last few months, for both of our businesses, what's been going on, and then we'll move on to kind of, what we're planning for 2025, what our focus is going to be. Next, I know you have prepared. I've taken a quick look at them. We're going to talk about the top 5 marketing strategies that we like for 2025, and there's some really interesting ones on the list that are a bit different.
A little bit different
and very interesting. And they really do tie into media as well. So we want to make sure that we're really kind of covering those and really helping our audience leverage their own marketing and their own media over that time. So, but let's start with a catch up.
Certainly.
Let's start with a catch up. So catch me up.
Well, first of all, I don't know if anyone's noticed the B&V Media mug here. Shout out to Matt Willette. He's one of our clients. He's with BMO, Bank of Montreal, and he came by before Christmas and gave us 2 of these bad boys. So shout out to my guy. He actually lives in my building too. So I see him from time to time, and hopefully he listens to this. But yeah, we're bringing the branded mugs out. You've got your Kickstart Consulting one.
I got my Kickstart Consulting one, yeah.
I'm telling you, we're being deliberate this year, folks. That's what it's all about. But 2024 was, I want to say, very much a transition year for B&V. We've been in this space now going on 5 years. It'll be 5 years this September. And although before that, we had maybe a year or two of going to different studios and kind of figuring out what the business was even going to look like. We really day one was when we moved into this studio, because that's really when things became serious. So we're 5 years in, and basically, and last year we look at it like that was our 4th year. And the first 3 years were very much like, okay, like, what are we doing? We're doing audio podcasts. Oh, we're adding video. We're doing this. Okay. And then and clients come in this way, from that direction, from this direction. And we didn't really have like a real marketing or sales plan. We didn't really have like an ideal client and who we should be targeting. It was very much like, oh, you want to start a podcast and you're a business? Like, perfect. That's what we do. Come on in. And we'll figure out the rest later.
I mean, honestly, you also have, over the years, have done a lot of more personal podcasts as well, like lifestyle and stuff like that, right?
Absolutely. That's kind of where we started, and there's always interest there. But we kind of had those great 3 years of because, there wasn't really podcasting going on in the city, and there's only a few companies still in the city. So it was like, we start this, there's a lot of people that want to start a podcast, and then they see that we exist and they come down. And that's what the first 3 years were like. And then 4th year was like, it started to a little die down, and, the peaks and valleys of everything. We hit that nice peak, and then we were kind of coming down to a valley, and we were trying to figure out, okay, like, once again, we need to be more deliberate with where we want this business to go with strategy. Like, who is our target client? Like, what does that ideal client look like? And we had somewhat of an idea, but we didn't really talk about it and strategize around that. So it was sort of a wake-up call beginning of 2024, where we still had that stable of clients that, are keeping the lights on, as I always say.
Yeah.
But it was like, okay, we need to go back to the drawing board and really go after clients instead of, hoping that word of mouth is enough and for them to fall into our laps. So, we did that a number of different ways, with putting out strategic reels, doing a bit of outreach, and even like taking on some other clients that were not necessarily associated with a business, but we figured, it'd be good to have them as part of our stable for word of mouth. Because we noticed when we had so many clients for those first years, the reason that we didn't need to do any outreach is because all of those people were doing our own marketing.
That's something to be proud of.
Yeah,
quite
and
frankly,
it's still a great form.
But the business life cycle changes, right? And growth needs to happen.
And I always say, which company spends the most on marketing in the entire world? It's Coca-Cola. And they're the biggest brand, or one of the biggest brands in the world. Yeah.
Like, brand awareness is not an issue for them.
No, and it's not. And it's everywhere, but they're still spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year.
Yeah, it's consistency.
On marketing and consistency and getting out there and getting out in front of people. So that's where it was like, okay, we really need to do that. And it paid off pretty early on. I mean, that's the thing about these things. If you're really serious about it and you have a good strategy, it tends to pay off. I don't know what it is about like the human nature where we don't think something's going to work. So we don't do it.
Good point.
And then we do it. And then it works.
And we're like, why didn't I do this sooner?
But then you still go back to that old like mindset of, well, I don't know if this is really worth it. But it's like every time we are deliberate about where we want to go with something, the world kind of just rewards you, or like, okay, I know what you're trying to do here. Here it is, kind of thing. Yeah. So we had some great new clients towards the end of 2024 with Shop Pros, with the Break Room podcast.
Yes.
So we kind of broke into the auto repair industry, the aftermarket industry. And then we started podcasts with Dalhousie University. Well, it's called Sciographies. It's the Faculty of Science. This is their 6th season. So they were doing it internally before, but they looked
to
outsource and no longer in-house. So we were lucky to kind of be the ones who were awarded that contract. Did season 6. It went great, and looking forward to season 7 this year. And then one that's really exciting to Jamie and I, my co-owner and co-business partner, we started a podcast with the Halifax Mooseheads, the junior hockey team here. We don't have any. Well, we have a couple professional teams. We got the Thunderbirds and the Wanderers, but like hockey is
that's the main.
It's Canada's sport. You know what I'm talking about. So the Mooseheads have been around since I think 1990. So Jamie and I we're 35. We were born in 1989. We grew up with the Mooseheads. We all had a Mooseheads jersey growing up. We all can name our favorite players growing up. So to be able to partner with them and start their podcast which started in late November, I think around there. It's been a lot of fun having Scott and Brad and the two co-hosts, and looking forward to continue the season into this year and then next year or this September for season 2. So really ended the year on a bright note, but the biggest lesson learned was you can't sit back on your laurels. It's great that we got those 3 big clients to see out the year, and before we've been like, all right, great, like we can kind of just rest a bit and see where this takes us.
All the lessons you learn in business, right?
But it's like, no, you can't take your foot off the pedal. And I'm not saying, go full throttle all the time, every time, because, that's where burnout
just as
comes into play.
counterproductive as well, right? Yeah.
But once again, and how many times, let's get the deliberate count up here. But once again, being deliberate with your actions, with your strategy, getting that effectiveness and that efficiency. And following through. That was a big thing. We had our big meeting the other day.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, early in the week.
B&V Kickstart Consulting, Kickoff 2025.
Strategy meeting for 2025. Yeah.
And that was the biggest thing. Holding each other accountable, not worrying about like, oh, am I bugging them? Like, no, like checking in on everyone, making sure you're getting your stuff done. You're reaching your goals that we've kind of set out for each quarter this year. And I'm very much looking for. As you can tell, I'm pretty pumped up, folks. Very excited for 2025.
We had a great meeting the other day. I left here, honestly, so motivated because, we really kind of sat down and I mean, any business owners listening to this, if you don't have a small circle of other entrepreneurs, find yourself one. Yeah. Because it's so important, even if you're in completely different industries, which, okay, we cross over in some ways with Kickstart Connections, but really our businesses are very different, right? But everyone's going through the same struggles. Everyone's going through the same, doubts and fears, and how do we grow? How do we do this? What's the best way? Am I going to regret doing it this way? So to have that community, I can't emphasize how important that is.
100%. Yeah. And I mean, we all know, folks, the news that we consume these days, it's not great. It's a lot of depressing war and violence. And now we've got the massive fires in Los Angeles, and it's January, like worst fire, I think, in Los Angeles history.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to, regardless of what your professional life and your personal life look like, consuming that type of content, like it just wears down on you. So surrounding yourself with more positive things, but with people who are like-minded to you.
Yes.
Because
so important.
The general public is not an entrepreneurial society. So you've got to find those people who are like you
and think the same way.
Think the same. Have meetings with them. Like a friend of mine who we don't get together as much anymore because we're both quite busy, and I think he's got a kid on the way now. But we used to have like monthly meetings and just go for a drink or whatever at a bar, and we both walk away from it just super pumped up for the next month to get into it. And it's tough because like life can be a struggle. Business can be a struggle. Entrepreneurship can be a struggle. But if you surround yourself with people who will lift you up when you're down,
exactly, yes,
and vice versa, you lift them up when they're down. You can't beat that.
Yeah. It's that power of community for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Anything else from 2024? I mean, on the
I really took up all of the time there. Sorry
that's fine, because
that.
mine's going to be quite quick anyway. But on the personal side, you had quite an exciting end to 2024 too.
That is true. Yes, my then girlfriend Rilla and I got engaged the end of November in New York City. It was a fantastic time. Everything worked out perfectly. So I have a fiance now.
You are a fiance, and you have a fiance.
Yeah,
and I'm so excited for both of you.
Big milestone in life. So looking forward to that wedding in the summer of 2026. That's the plan. So
that will be here before you know it.
Yeah, I know.
Just saying.
And then kids. So if you want a podcast, we need to get the money start rolling in here, because kids are drainers. They're money suckers.
They are, but they're cute.
They are cute.
And you get
not
to
as cute
have
as oatmeal.
Well, I mean, he does have a really cute sweater on today. I'm not going to lie.
Let me just put his sweater.
Yeah.
Come here, buddy. He's so cozy under the table.
He's sleeping under the desk.
I'll pull him up later in the episodes.
You'll see him before the end of the episode.
Yeah, you'll see him.
Okay, let me give you my 2024 update real quick.
Lay it on me.
Yeah, it was. So for Kickstart Consulting, it was a great year. I related to a lot of what you were saying about that journey. I think as business owners, we all go through it in the first few years of business, is that process of finding your lane, and really sort of narrowing down kind of exactly what you do and what you specialize in and those kind of things. And 2024 for me was the first year of really focusing on that. And it paid off. It really, really paid off. I mean, as you know, my main sort of project for the year, I worked very closely with the Steel Auto Group, which one of the largest dealer groups in Canada. They also have dealerships in the States as well. And we worked together. It was such a fun project. We worked together to design their own customized sales process training, which then got delivered to over 400 participants over the course of 6 months. And it was a huge success, I have to say. I mean, I had pretty high hopes going into it. But I have to say, once we started looking at the results and really kind of the impact that it had made, very, very proud of that one. Also a great company to work with. I mean, we fit as far as the way we see things. They were very dedicated to the process as well, and really did everything that they needed to do to make sure that, you know, the training was fully implemented, et cetera. And then at the end of the year, I'm now moving into my next phase with them, which is designing a 12-month leadership program specifically related to automotive. But I'm really excited about this because it's something, obviously, I worked in the industry for a long time. I mean, February 3rd, it'll be 20 years since I first started in the car business. 20 years. I was 18 years old and I got a job as a receptionist in an Audi dealership. So 20 years is coming up. Definitely feel old now. But in my 20 years, the point I'm trying to make here is in my 20 years, did a lot of training. I made my way from, like I say, started as a receptionist, moved my way into trainee sales management, and kind of, you know, climbed the ladder a bit in the dealership world. And leadership training was always kind of missing. You got process training, you know, learn how to use the systems when you moved into management and things like that. But actual formal training of how to be a healthy leader, how to manage people, how to effectively motivate and engage people, like those kind of things, it was noticeably absent in the industry. And I think it still is, to be honest. And then when I went back to school and did my business degree, I really enjoyed kind of organizational behavior courses, you know, because a lot of leadership is psychology, right? And I really enjoyed that, and I even had it in my head back then. I was like, this is something that's missing from my industry. So now, a few years later, I'm going to be the one to offer it.
Here we are.
I'm going to be the one to offer it. So
Love it.
Yeah, so I really see that as being my primary focus for 2025 is just getting this program perfected, and really then spreading the love with it. You know, I'm you know, certainly looking for other dealer groups to partner with, both in Canada and potentially the UK and the States as well. So there's some really, really exciting things on the go. And obviously, as we go through the year, I will be able to share more about kind of some specifics and things like that of the things that are going on. But yeah, I am entering 2025 with high expectations. Not going to lie. Yeah.
We're excited to see where that goes.
Yeah. And let's cover some other 2025 stuff.
Sure.
Right? You know, I'm just thinking back to our meeting the other day.
Yeah.
Just quickly. Because there were some specific BNV focuses for this year too. Right? I'm thinking now about our discussion around events. Right? We really want to crank that up. As a lot of you will know, we've done a few events now, conferences, product launches, and actually I'm going to come back to that one later, but various different events where we not just create content, but create engagement. That's the big thing, is we create engagement because we interact directly with guest speakers and really just add that extra value.
Big time. Every time, we've done, I think 7 or 8 pop-up podcasts at events and conferences. And every single time it doesn't matter what any other booth looks like. When people come by and they see the cameras on, they see the lights, it's lights, camera, action. It draws people in and it creates sort of a spectacle. And that's only one minor part of why it's so great, because we're not just doing the pop-up podcast, but we can do media around the event, whether it's like podcast on the fly. It's what we call the other version, is where you go around the event and get testimonials right there when the event's happening, as opposed to sending out a questionnaire after the fact. Right.
Because let's face it, how impactful really are post-event. I mean, we all know what it's like, right? We go to an event. If we really enjoy it, we're excited to be there and it's great. And then you leave and you go back to life.
Yeah.
Are you really going to take the time to really share feedback? Maybe if some of that excitement may be worn off. It's just capturing.
And what do you do with those, right? I think a lot of events have looked at feedback as being an internal thing. It should be both. So if you're just getting someone filling out a questionnaire, you can't share that with potential new event goers.
Very good point.
Or whatever it may be. Yeah. But if you capture it in video form, then you can share those.
Then it becomes a marketing tool.
Then it becomes a marketing tool.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of it would be just capturing B-roll and stuff to create, sizzle reels for the event at large.
Yeah. And, just that other point of the power of a marketing tool as well, as I was just kind of saying about, capturing the excitement live there at the event. I say this all the time. I know I've said this before in this podcast, but great marketing is all about evoking emotion, right? So if you can capture that emotion in real time, it's powerful. Yeah. It's very powerful. So that
seems like a no-brainer.
It does. It absolutely does. So that's one thing that we are certainly looking to do more of this year. It's fun, to say the least. We always have a great time when we go to these events and stuff as well. So
it's always, because it goes back,
especially if we travel too. It's always
the
fun.
flaneuring folks. I talk about it all the time. But if you're going to a city that you're not too familiar with, just walk around with no true destination in mind. You can kind of have an idea. Like, we're in Toronto, we know where the CN Tower is, but just walking through like Little Portugal or Little Italy or in Ottawa, even though it was freezing cold, we walked a little bit around.
See, in the summer, I would definitely flaneur.
Yeah.
In the summer, I will happily flaneur with you guys. When we were in Ottawa in February and it was freezing cold,
it was quite cold.
I was not leaving that Airbnb.
You didn't.
I didn't.
I mean, I still remember how we needed you for trivia.
You're never going to forget that one. The British question.
British movies. I don't know. 3 weddings and a funeral.
It was 4 weddings and a funeral, and I knew it right away.
Yeah.
Oh, hilarious! But
it's lots of fun. So we're looking forward to not only doing them across the country and into the U.S., but here in Halifax.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on here, this city, right?
Yeah. So if you're having an event in Halifax over the next year, you're probably going to hear from us.
And even if you don't, though, if you're interested in this concept, this pop-up podcast, and want to learn more, maybe see some of the work that we've done, don't hesitate to reach out. We would be so happy to meet with you and discuss your ideas and see what we can do to help bring those to life, for sure. And then the other avenue, I guess, that I want to mention is our full service podcast offering. This is something that we had in mind for quite a while. It was brought into fruition last year with the first client, and it's been great.
It has.
And I think it's something that for the right client, it offers a ton of value, because it takes, think about, why do most, put it this way, I do believe, and we're going to go into marketing strategies in a second, and we'll probably talk about these kind of things, but I do believe that businesses and companies, they do understand the power of podcasting more now than they ever have. There's still a little bit of an education piece, absolutely, which is what we do.
Yep.
But I think the understanding is there, but it's the restraints of who's going to do it, who's going to host it, is it going to be any good? Do we need to get it, professionally produced and those kind of things?
Is there
like
going to be guests? Like,
time.
How do I get guests?
Yeah, and just even knowing how the process of creating a podcast works.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where B&V Media comes in. Right. And when we can literally take everything off your hands, when it comes to the planning, the guest outreach. So obviously post-production, branding, hosting, everything can really be taken care of in-house here. And I definitely want to be doing more of that in 2025. It's fun.
And that's kind of like targeting the bigger brands. And I go back to a company that we kind of modeled B&V Media off of Pacific Content, started by Steve Pratt back in, I shouldn't even say back in when. I think it's like 2015, 2016.
Right.
Where they were doing podcasts for Facebook and McAfee Securities, and they were doing full service, just audio.
Yeah.
I think they still just do audio, but they're doing full service. Well, don't want to go into it. Pacific Content was actually bought by Rogers, and then it was kind of like amalgamated and melted into
it got
Rogers
lost.
Media.
Yeah.
It doesn't really exist anymore. It sort of does, but not really. But that's sort of beside the point. So they were doing the same thing. They were getting these big brands to jump on board, and they were like, we will take it from point A to point Z.
Mm-hmm.
We'll provide a host. We'll provide the strategy. We'll go after the guests. It's just those initial meetings to figure out, where are you in standing in the market.
To make sure we fully understand the concept, right?
What are the goals you want to reach and what do you want to get out of this podcast realistically? We take that, and then we obviously do a little brand audit and take a look at what that business is and where they want to be in 5-10 years, whatever it may be, and who their audience is and how do they currently target that audience. Everything that would go into that process. That's what we can take care of for you.
Right.
So these bigger brands and we've seen that where, like right now, we have a client we're talking to who's struggling to find a host. So now we're in the process of seeing if one of our hosts in our lineup works for that. And it's not always going to, and if it can depend. And
right, it's got to be the right fit.
It's got to be the right fit. But I mean, if that's what pops into your head, it's like, oh, I see the benefits of a podcast. I see it happen. I'm on LinkedIn and I see all these people doing podcasts. I think I should do it for my business, but I don't have the time as CEO.
Yeah.
My CFO doesn't have the time. And then the marketing team, what am I just going to unload that on them and give them another task for no extra money? Or do I pay them more for that? Or do I go after someone?
And do they have the knowledge and skills to do it, right?
Yeah. Like we have professional hosts. You're asking someone who's never hosted a podcast to go on camera, talk on camera, and do well and not look awkward, we've been doing this for so many years now, and we take it for granted in a lot of ways because that's kind of one of the things we learn. We're like, you can't just come off the streets and then try to host a podcast.
No.
Unless you have a background in being in front of a camera or public speaking. But
I mean, that is kind of what I did, but
yeah, but
I have an accent.
You're British, and that's how it goes. And you also you're in sales.
Yeah,
so
and I mean,
know how to talk to someone.
And I'm a professional trainer. I'm
yes.
I'm pretty comfortable.
And now a professional
talking,
host. You're
and
welcome.
Now professional
Thank you very
host
much.
as well. Yes, thank you. You gave me a whole new career, Marc.
We try, but definitely those two avenues. Really, once again, being deliberate with going after these organizers, these conference organizers, the companies that are having these events.
Yeah,
and not sitting back and waiting for them to come to us.
Yeah.
So that's going to be. I'm very excited for that. I think we're going to get right into it with a lot of interest, and then of course that bigger step where. 5 years ago we started, it was very small. It was little personal podcasts, people in Halifax. And we still don't want to necessarily completely forget about that. But it's like, if we want to scale, and we do, and we want to get bigger and bigger and bigger, which we do, we're not some crazy capitalists over here, okay? Eventually there will be a point we'll be satisfied, we promise. Yeah. But we're nowhere near that yet.
Yeah.
So scaling, I mean, there's many ways to do it, but one of the best ways is, looking at who's your target audience and really targeting those bigger brands that have that budget to pay your worth. Because we know now what our worth is. And now it's like, okay, based on what that worth is, who's able to pay that? It's the bigger brands, it's the bigger businesses.
That's another huge growth curve for business owners as well.
Yes.
Is that
knowing
piece,
your
the
worth.
pricing piece, and all kinds of stuff.
And it's tough, and it still is difficult to price out, and it can be different, and you can obviously negotiate on pricing, and that makes sense. But we were just talking to our good friend and friend of the show, Martina Kalatis.
Shout out Martina.
Talking about how she has a baseline.
Yeah.
This is the least I'll ask. And she doesn't publicize that, but she knows in her head, if I get any offers lower than that, it's a no, it's a negotiation to get to that bottom.
Yeah.
That floor.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. All right, should we move on?
Let's get into it. Wow, I'm very talkative today.
You are. I like it, though. I'm
fired up, folks.
Fired
the
up
Devils
for the
lost
new year.
last night in overtime to the Rangers. I'm not happy about that, but good feeling. Hockey, yeah. And don't talk about the 49ers, okay? It was a nightmare year.
I'm not up to
But I will
speed
talk
on-
about Newcastle United and who they're above in the table right now.
We don't need to talk about that. We don't have time.
Manchester. People are no one's showing their face in Manchester right now, blue or red. I'll tell you right now.
Listen. Oh, I'm not. You're trying to wind me up. I'm not buying.
Also, the people listening to this
I'm
are
not
like,
buying.
why are they talking about British shit again?
British shit. Stop it.
British Bake Off.
It's the biggest sport in the world. So you just
preach to
your
the
mouth
choir
there.
here. I just don't want to get too off topic.
Anyway,
you know?
you're still managing to get me riled up. Stop
just
it.
Brought up all three of my favorite sport teams.
Okay, well, let's move on to our next segment, which, as I said at the beginning, we're going to be talking about 5 of the top, or as we see it, as the top marketing strategies for 2025. I'm excited to kind of go through this list because there's definitely some differences. There's some really cool concepts in here that maybe we haven't thought about yet. Right, so hopefully this will provide some value, maybe get some ideas generating amongst our listeners for their businesses. So the first one that I have on my list is something called chaos marketing. What's that?
Yeah, chaos marketing. I can kind of relate it back to one of my favorite types of marketing is guerrilla marketing, and it's marketing that it's like something's out of place. Or it's like not
what you would expect.
Not what you expect. Guerrilla marketing, it goes back to like this thing called the Cacophony Society. And they started Burning Man.
Oh, okay.
And what they do is they do events, but not really events, but they stage certain things in public that make someone go,
what is going on?
What the hell?
Yeah.
So for example, at the San Francisco Marathon, this was many, many years ago, a bunch of them dressed up as salmon, full salmon suits, and ran upstream, up against the marathon, like through the runners.
Oh.
So it's just like, now that's an interesting one because the marathon runners are actually doing something, but it also like it breaks their concentration. A better example would be so a bunch of people dressed up as clowns, and at each bus stop, there was one clown on one route. So this particular bus, I can't remember what city it was on, but it stopped at each bus stop, and each time a clown would come on, but none of the clowns would interact with one another.
And just
they would just get on
each
and
other.
act like they're not dressed as a clown.
Okay.
And so people that are commuting and they're just in that daily haze,
Yeah.
they get pulled out of it, and they're like, "What the heck's going on here?" That's when you really have someone's attention. So guerrilla marketing, it's like when you see anything that you're like interacting with outside, like if you're walking down the waterfront, for example, if there's someone dressed in like a big lobster suit or whatever it may be. Now here in Halifax, lobster isn't that out of the ordinary.
No, I was going to say we see things like that all
we're
the
like,
time.
yeah, that makes sense. We're going to keep going, but it's just it's stuff. It's like it's a cultural jam is what I like to call it, and jam not in like the edible sense, but like jam and like it's like you're jamming the system.
Okay. All right. I'm with you.
Jam in the system.
I'm with you.
And so chaos marketing, and for this example is chaos packaging, is brands are starting to put their brand in packaging, so to speak, or in an ad that is completely the opposite of what you would expect to see.
So it's triggering that same kind of response from consumers.
Exactly.
Because it's something that's just like, oh, this is weird,
What's going
unexpected.
on here?
What's going on here? I must learn more.
I'm gonna look into it because like this goes back to the bus where you're not paying attention to anything. You're just on the bus. You're waiting to get to work. Same thing when you're scrolling on Instagram. You're just like, I'm just, I'll doom scrolling, but just mindlessly going through. But if I see a picture of, this example is sunscreen in a whipped cream can. It's like, what is this? And then you've grabbed the attention of that person. And at the end of the day, like that initial marketing that's what you want to do. You want people to stop scrolling.
And we live in a world where there is constant competition for people's attention.
Yeah.
Right? Then that's why brands have to innovate and they have to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. I like
and you can do with video too. You can just do a chaotic video where like someone's on a roof and they're like, looks like they're about to fall, and then they transitions to them like not fall, like just like stuff that really is out of the ordinary.
Yeah,
doesn't necessarily have to do with your brand, but you're breaking the concentration, you're breaking the attention span, and like bringing the spotlight onto you.
I like it. Okay, cool.
So that's number one. We'll keep an eye on that.
That's number one. Yeah, we will for sure. Number two is small in real life events.
And I could say small or big.
Yeah, I think just the in real life, we're kind of doing that full circle, aren't we? With COVID, obviously that pushed everything online very quickly.
Yeah.
And I think honestly the business community did a great job of adapting to that new reality, right? And it was certainly great to have that technology available to be able to pivot like that. But this is something I talk about a lot.
We're social beings.
We are social beings. And as much as technology, I think this about AI as well, like as much as technology evolves, gets smarter, gives, a lot more options of the ways to be able to do things, human nature stays consistent. So there's always going to be that point where it's not, in my opinion, it's not going to replace that human interaction. I talk about this a lot in sales and the psychology of selling, especially kind of high ticket items and things like that. But events, we are seeing that trend, aren't we? That people are getting that Zoom fatigue, right? Being online in meetings all the time and things like that, and missing that.
And there's something about that energy, and we've talked about this before, even having like in-person meetings. Like you feed off that indescribable energy that everyone's putting out into the atmosphere, especially when it's like a meet and greet, or it's an entrepreneurial workshop, or everyone's there to learn and to network. Like that energy you can't recreate online.
No, you can't at all.
And we're chronically online now, and we're seeing more and more this need. I don't say want, this need to get back out into the real world, like, and
physically connect.
Physically, we're so far down the rabbit hole online that a lot of us don't even know what the real world is anymore.
That's wild. Yeah.
So in real life events, obviously, that's our bread and butter, or at least one of them.
It is. It's yeah. But we offer that for that reason.
Yeah.
Right? I remember when we were first brainstorming about, what became the pop-up podcast concept, and we were first talking about it, a lot of the reason that we really believed in it, and it's been tried and tested now, is that it heightens that level of engagement. It heightens that level of connection.
Yeah.
To make not only your event more memorable, but to have that last as well through evergreen content that's created, right?
Exactly.
So it's great to see that actually we are trending back to this. I think it's important that we do, because I just think the value is if you can get that connection piece, the value is going to be so much greater.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was at a wedding on New Year's Eve, childhood friend of mine, and there are several business owners there and entrepreneurs. And I know all of them. Yeah. But I haven't reached out to them.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I'm getting into all these conversations, learning about the new things that they're doing.
Yeah.
They're learning about the new things that we're doing over at B&V. And it's all of a sudden it's like, hey, there might be a collaboration opportunity here.
Right.
But I was never going to reach out to you. You were never going to reach out to me.
You need to
because of
have
this
these
event,
social interactions to have these
it's
kind of
gotta happen.
conversations.
And
Yeah.
with this example, like this is just very surface level. Just get out to a host an actual event. Then what we say is let's dive a little bit
Then
deeper.
elevate it.
Let's elevate it with the pop-up podcast, with the podcast on the fly, getting that testimonial, getting that true feel of what people are thinking about and how they're feeling at this event.
Yeah.
So then you can have another one. You can grow it and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Love it. All right, we're going to keep this rolling.
Keep it going.
Number 3, another favorite of mine. First-person storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, once again, this is where podcasting
that
all
is
starts,
podcasting,
right?
really, isn't
That's
it? Yeah.
what it's all about. And there's many different ways to do it. You can go online, and you can do like little short reels on Instagram, and even blogging. That's still first person storytelling, but that all comes back to like trust is the biggest thing. Like if you don't trust a business or brand, you're typically not going to want to do business with them.
Exactly.
And when you're telling your story, first person, true perspective, it's not some ad, it's not some billboard, it's not a television commercial where you've hired actors to tell the story. It's from the top, or it's someone internal who's telling the story of the business and really seeing like the on the other side, the potential customer is really getting to connect with it on that deeper level.
Yeah. And we've talked about this before, but it's the power of authenticity.
Yeah.
Right. And that is how, it goes back to human nature. We connect with people when they are being the most real version of themselves.
Oh, yeah. Well, just storytelling in general, like that is history.
Yeah.
That's all history is storytelling.
Yeah. Yeah. So. No, it's powerful. It's powerful. Okay. Number 4 on the list is niche newsletters.
Yeah. So
talk about that for a sec. This is an interesting one too.
Well, yeah. And I was interested and happy to kind of see it on the list that we were kind of going through while researching for this episode, because you think about a newsletter, it's like, oh, well, that's been around for a long time. Like companies have had newsletters that they send out that they got from their email list. Email's been around since the 90s. But where we're pushing all this like new marketing, do the chaos marketing, like do a podcast, that's all new age stuff. But mixing it with older forms of marketing can kind of be like a secret sauce sort of recipe.
Right.
Because if you have that niche newsletter that you've started, you've built that following up, that becomes the pillar to all other things that you're doing.
To
that
then
you can
bring
share,
other complementary tools in.
So if you started your podcast, you start your newsletter, and you're writing about the industry, and you're already providing value there. But once you've built that following up, then you can use all other strategies and give value in different ways. Of course, one of them being a podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's about having that foundation, isn't it? Because again, I think most people now, I've definitely done it. When we think marketing these days, back in the day, we think marketing, we would think radio ads, TV ads, print ads, like that was kind of the traditional marketing. Now, people you go straight to social media.
Yep.
It's not easy to grow a following on social media these days. There's so much noise, and so it's such a saturated space that you do need, I really believe you do need to leverage some of the traditional tools to build yourself that foundation that you can then leverage and bring into when you bring into some of these new tools. So it's all about having a very strategic marketing mix, not putting all of your eggs in one basket or one way, but really being open-minded. And I think, you have to have that. We talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but you have to have that knowledge of who your ideal customer is and where they hang out.
Yeah.
Right. We've talked about that before. So yeah, niche newsletters. I like it. Okay. And number 5, the last one.
This is the one you were
do you know what? I put this down because what this made me think about is trend jacking is what it's called. So this is, and I'm sure you'll have seen this is, paying attention to those social media trends. We all see it. We know that TikTok and Instagram, their algorithms love trending content, right? It could be an audio clip It could be a video that has been repurposed many times by many different people and changed and all of those kind of things. You can leverage those to be able to maximize engagement. Yep. That's my understanding of it. This is more your world, but that's my understanding of it.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like the example here that we were looking at, Duolingo, they created an ad where it's based on, I don't know if you've seen The Bear, the show on...
I haven't. It's on my list.
On Disney Plus, maybe it's on like Star FX. Either way, it's
Whatever.
on Disney
I've
Plus
heard of
up here in Canada. And it's winning all the Golden Globes, and Jeremy Allen White, the main guy, he's huge now. They're doing lookalike contests in New York with him.
That's
the guy
hilarious.
who won looked exactly like him.
Wow, he's a very unique looking person too.
He's a very unique looking person, right? But what's interesting about trend jacking is when you put it in comparison to chaos marketing, it's the same, you're getting the same goal, you're getting that attention, but in very different ways. Like chaos marketing is something out of the ordinary, something that doesn't make sense. And you're like, and you stop and you're like, hey, I need to do, what's going on here? I need to investigate here. Trend jacking is you're taking something that's very familiar to someone and using that familiarity for them to stop scrolling and being like, hey, this is The Bear, but it's not exactly like what's going on here. And then all of a sudden you've watched an ad for Duolingo.
And it's still creating that same effect of people will look and say, these two things don't fit. Or like, there's something different here. Yeah. So it still grabs the attention in the same way. Yeah, good point. Very good point. Okay, so, I mean, I love those 5 for marketing strategies. I think there's something a bit different. I hope that, again, maybe listeners, hopefully you got something out of that, maybe some ideas and things like that. The last segment of today's show, we are going longer than normal today. It's our first episode first episode of the year. We've got a lot to cover. But our last segment of the show today, we're going back to podcasting. Obviously, this is our area of expertise, and this is what we want to talk about. Let's talk about 5 businesses or industries that can benefit from a podcast and why. Okay, so I'm going to go first with this one actually, because first on our list is an industry very dear to my heart. Automotive brands and dealers.
Yeah.
How can they benefit from a podcast, but also what podcasting can then also offer, right? So if we look at, let's think automotive brands first. So I want to talk about trust is what I want to talk about here, right? Because we all know how important, and this is for dealers as well, we know how important trust is, right? I mean, really when buying anything, but specifically buying
a car.
A car is your second largest purchase you're ever going to make.
I'm actually going to test drive a car potentially tomorrow.
Oh, we'll talk about that afterwards. Yeah. Interesting. So trust is very important. So this then leads us back to that, authentic communication, being that leading voice of your industry and providing that added value of knowledge sharing is huge. But also, we did a great event, didn't we? Back in, it was September. We did an event. We partnered with Genesis in Halifax, part of the Steel Auto Group. They had a launch event for their brand new model. I have been to a million launch events in my time, in my 20 years in the industry. I'm sure you can imagine. And, it's one of those things that they happen relatively often, right? Your dealers always want to make a big deal of the new model and invite their customers in and show a bit of customer appreciation, show them the new model and have that kind of one-on-one time with them, that face-to-face time. But how do we break away from the norm and do something different? Yeah. Well, Genesis Halifax hired us to essentially do a pop-up podcast at their launch event. It was a 2-hour event. We were there. We shot B-roll footage. We put together a sizzle reel from the event, and we interviewed the guests. We got that first impression. As soon as the vehicle was unveiled, we were interviewing them, asking them what they think. Yeah. We were asking them what they love about driving the Genesis they own, how they love the experience they have at that particular dealer. And what that really provides is some great marketing material for that dealer to then continue to use it in perpetuity, right? So, and a podcast essentially, yes, in its natural form is a 30, 45-minute episode that sits on YouTube with video or the audio platforms where experts impart knowledge, right? That's essentially what a podcast is. But having a podcast, not only does it allow you to spread that knowledge and connect with your audience, it also provides you with a ton of content that you can use directly in your marketing. So I really think the automotive space specifically, I mean, sure, that applies to a lot of other industries, but the automotive space in particular, when it comes to leveraging technology, always seems to be a little bit behind the times. And always looking for just different ways to innovate and things like that. So I think that is certainly an industry that can benefit from some of these tools.
Oh, yeah.
That's
absolutely.
my 2 cents anyway on that one.
Definitely. And we've done a couple things with the auto industry last year.
Yeah, we did some events and then obviously the break room, the podcast. Yeah. And I mean, there's a ton of content for them to be using and we're seeing great success with it. So it's any... automotive people out there, it's something to consider for sure. I'm going to hand over to you for the next one, though. The next one on our list, number 2, is universities and educational institutions. So how can they benefit from a podcast?
Yeah, so we've had universities on our radar for the last year or so, and that certainly paid off initially end of year or fourth quarter last year with bringing on Dalhousie University with Sciographies, as mentioned earlier in the episode, the Faculty of Science official podcast there. And one of the biggest things that universities are struggling with right now is connecting to this next generation that is very much connected to their phones and everything online. The days of university representatives coming to the high schools and doing a presentation, or the days of students going to the universities and visiting. I mean, it still happens, but it doesn't have the
same impact
that it used to.
You need something else as well.
Right? Because before there was no way to get a hold of, like, if you were going to university, you needed to go to these things. You needed to go to the events where you're getting flyers or being handed out pamphlets like, join, go, come to MUN, come to Dow, come to St. Mary's, here's why, blah, blah, blah. Now you have the opportunity to reach the students right on their little screen. They don't need to come to the university when they're in grade 12 to come check out if it's where they want to be. The university can come to them and see this is who we are and do you want to be part of this experience? So podcasting is one of those new forms of media that you have the audio side of things, so you can have those full episodes. But if you add that video aspect, then you can create
especially short form content,
the short form clips that can go on the social media sites of the social media accounts of these universities and reach those students strategically. I mean, through social media. And then, of course, pushing them to the podcast.
It's creating that funnel. I think that's the biggest thing, isn't it? Is strategically creating that funnel for them to go down. And it links back to being where your audience is, right? And like you say, the younger generations, I mean, they've spent their lives online, really, at this point. So love that.
Yeah,
love
exactly.
That.
And I mean, with Sciographies, what they're doing is they're having on faculty as guests, and it's hosted by a faculty member in the science department as well, David, great guy. But it's putting a spotlight on who these students are going to interact with. So it's on that other end. It's like, okay, I want to go into the Faculty of Science at Dalhousie. Well, I'm looking at these names and I don't know who they are, this professor, this doctor, whoever. Here's them on a podcast being interviewed candidly for an hour. You're really going to get to know who they are, and whether or not that's who you want to learn from.
Such a good point. So true. Okay, number 3, and we can probably both speak to this one a little bit, but financial brands. Again, I know BMV Media, you've had some success working with financial brands.
Yeah.
What have those clients that what have they achieved, I guess, through using podcasting as part of their marketing kit?
Absolutely. And I think this can go back to one of the biggest indicators in the automotive industry is that trust piece.
You took the words out of my mouth. That's exactly what I was going to say on this as well.
Great minds think alike,
they
right?
do.
But
they do.
Trust in the financial industry, I mean, both industries have that sort of reputation.
Yeah.
And it's not everyone, we're not pointing fingers,
No.
but, it's always that story of like someone who doesn't know anything about cars. They go in and they get charged $300,000 more than they should have been charged. And then on the financial side of things, you've got a financial.
It's your money.
It's your money, right? And you've got this financial advisor saying, "Oh, you should invest your money here." Yada yada. It's like, I have no idea who you are. Are you just stealing my money? What are you doing? So, coming back to that trust, coming back to the storytelling piece, showing people who you truly are and who your business is. I think that's massive. One of our mainstay clients, Control and Compound, they've been our client now for almost 3 years, coming up on 3 years this spring, which is crazy to think.
Wild, yeah.
But they are in the life insurance industry, but very much tied into the financial side of things, where they're using it as a vehicle for investors. And life insurance, that's another industry where people are like, oh, what's going on? Because it has a reputation because there have been shady actors in the past.
Yeah.
So what Darren and his team was able to do is start this podcast and the secondary content, because there is video. So he's on every social media platform, the business is. He's really able to show who he is and show people that, hey, this is the face of this business. And if you have any issues at all, like, here's our podcast. We've got a podcast every week for the last 3 years. You can learn about what we're doing.
Right.
We're not trying to hide anything. And we're very much open to discussion.
Yeah. And I think I'm thinking specifically kind of on the financial side as well. Why do we go to financial experts? Because we don't have the knowledge they do.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's the educational piece.
Absolutely.
And even, for people that run those kind of businesses where they really are professionals, there is a lot of knowledge that is needed to do what you do, even just to have that resource available. I know we talk about this a lot with the break room, right, in automotive, but it's having that resource to be able, when you are dealing with a potential client and they have questions about something, send them an episode of your podcast that answers their questions.
Yeah.
Right? It can be a great resource, as well as obviously what that's then going to also be able to do for you from a marketing perspective.
Absolutely. And from a marketing perspective, for sure, because it's not just about the customers trusting you. I mean, that's a massive part.
Yeah.
But it's also that exposure and the recognition. Yeah. So, for example, Darren, one of his goals was to be able to speak at massive conferences, whether it's real estate or general investing. And now he doesn't even have, when we were first starting, he was like, okay, we got to reach out to these conferences and say who Darren is and all that great stuff. But now these conferences are reaching out to him.
Right.
He has these incredible partnerships with massive financial organizations now because of the podcast and that presence on social media.
Yeah. Such a good point. Okay. What are we at now? Number 4, nonprofit organizations. So we don't always think, when we think about podcasting for business, we typically go to marketing tool. It's a way to generate sales, a way to generate revenue, and a way to generate profit, right?
Yeah.
But what about nonprofit organizations? How can podcasting really be a great fit for them and a great addition to their overall strategy?
Well, so one of the biggest things for not-for-profit organizations is they're not-for-profit, right? So they very much depend on external funding, grants, donations, whatever it may be. So they need to show to the general public and to businesses what they're doing, the impact of what they're doing, who they are, and who they're positively affecting.
Yeah.
So they have, it comes back to the storytelling aspect. Like, not-for-profit organizations have to tell their story, and they have to tell it effectively. So podcasting right there, that's storytelling.
Right.
That's connecting on a deeper level with potential funders, whatever it may be.
And also creating awareness of the cause.
And creating awareness of the cause. I mean, that's the other big thing is like you want to create the awareness. You do need the money to keep going, but you also want the general public to know what you're up to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Okay, last one, number 5, global enterprises. So, we have seen that a bit, large global enterprises leveraging podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
Why do they do it? What does it give them?
I mean, it's really those general themes of trust and brand recognition, and using the podcast. Like for this example, a massive company was using the podcast to create some noise around the conference that they were attending later that year. So they wanted people to know, hey, we're going to be at this conference. Now, I don't think they had a pop-up podcast in this particular example, but they were like, we're going to be at this conference. Come see our booth.
Mm-hmm.
No other businesses were really doing it. So even if it was just a small, even if 30 people listen to that podcast, you've got 30 more people that are going to come to your booth.
Right.
Those 30 people are going to tell more people.
And it generates engagement prior to the event as well.
It generates engagement prior to the event. I mean, with massive brands, you have that massive marketing budget. So you're marketing across many different aspects and landscapes. But that podcasting can kind of sort of be that anchor that holds it all together.
Love that. Yep. And actually I want to just add a point onto there as well, because, and just to kind of differentiate, again, we tend to think when we think podcasting and what it can do, we do tend to go directly towards, marketing and reaching clients, potential clients, like it's all around that client relationship. But another area that I think can really be benefited from, especially for large companies, is connecting with employees, right? Yep. I mean, you think about it, you've got a multinational company or national company with employees that are located in various different places. Yep. How do you maintain that connection? How do you effectively communicate with them to make sure everyone's on the same page and know the direction the company's going in, and all of those kind of things? How do you connect them so they feel like they know the CEO and the more senior leaders in the company? A podcast is a great way to do that, and just really even just using it internally can really add a lot of value.
If it's a Fortune 500 company, most of the people that work for that company may never speak to the CEO once.
Right.
But and you'll see the CEO doing an interview on BNN or whatever it may be, CNN or MSNBC, but they're not talking to the employees. They're talking to the potential customers and the other businesses that may want to work with them. And an internal podcast is like it's internal. It's not for the outside world. It's for those employees to build morale, to make it feel like, okay, I actually kind of feel like I know the CEO or the CFO or the executive level.
Yeah.
And in turn, like, okay, like I feel more invested in this company. I see what type of people they are. I want to do my best work.
Right. It's that feeling of belonging, which is very, very important. And also, as the younger generations are joining the workforce, it used to be about, okay, what job can I get that's going to pay me the most money? Really?
Yeah.
The newer generations, they're not driven like that, right? They want to work for a company that, yes, is going to pay them fairly. Of course, we all need to make a certain amount to live the life we want to live. But they really want beyond that. They want that fulfillment. They want that sense of purpose. They want opportunities for development. They want that connection and that feeling of belonging.
Yeah.
And I just think that podcasting is a media form that you can really use internally to do all of those things. The younger generation also doesn't stay in jobs as long as the older generations. I mean, if you think like boomer generation, you get a job when you're 18, 20, and you stay in that job until you retire.
Yep.
The world don't work like that anymore, right? I mean, actually, you're seeing trends of, again, younger generations they're intentionally jumping jobs every couple of years because that is how they are getting the progression.
Yeah.
Because every time they get a new job, they move up a step.
Yeah.
Right? So that's actually part of their strategy. So if you don't keep those people engaged and, you know, really feeling like they are cared about and they really have that enjoyment and that fulfillment out of what they do, you're not going to retain them.
Employee retention.
Employee retention. I mean, it's a huge cost for any company.
Absolutely.
Right. So I wanted to add that bit because that is a little different.
I like it.
Yeah,
I like it.
There we have it. That's, you know, our 5 marketing strategies for the year, our 5 businesses, industries that really can leverage podcasting. And if they're not already, they should really probably start thinking about it. But yeah, that was a solid first episode of the season.
That was great. We're well over an hour, so apologies to anyone who had to pull over from their commute to finish this
it
episode.
because
it's just so good.
So interesting.
But yeah, like we said at the top of this episode, we're very excited for 2025.
Yeah.
Very excited to get this consistent bi-weekly, have these great conversations that benefit us because it pumps us up too.
It benefits us. It keeps us motivated. It keeps us sharing ideas. And, you know, when we started Kickstart Connections, the goal was and the goal remains to be a platform or a place to connect entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
So if by listening into us having these conversations, if that can help you in your business, if that can help give you ideas, if hearing our struggles can make you feel better about your own, we want to be here to provide that for you. Obviously, as we continue into the year, we are still going to have guest episodes, so I will do a quick shout out there. Anyone listening, if you are a business owner and you want to take advantage of a podcast interview, and especially if you've got a specific topic that you would like to discuss, please reach out to us and really just reach out, connect with us. We would love to chat with you about having you on as a guest.
Yep.
And in the meantime, obviously we will be continuing to co-host episodes and having these great conversations. So
absolutely, yeah, and plenty of ways to reach out. You can go on Instagram at bnv.media. You can email me, Marc, M-A-R-C, at bnvmedia.ca. And you can reach out to Kickstart Connections on Instagram as well, at Kickstart Connections Podcast, or just at
Kickstart Connections Podcast.
At Kickstart Connections Podcast. So many ways to do it. Follow us on those platforms as well, because putting out a bunch of good stuff this year. Like Lucy said, if you are an entrepreneur locally or in Canada and you want to come on, let us know. We'd love to chat with you about that. And before we go, of course, as promised, gotta bring this boy up.
Yes, we've got.
If you're listening, apologies, you're missing.
You
out.
are missing out on a very cute dog with a very cute sweater.
He's such a sleepy boy. He always loves whenever we do recordings. He goes underneath the table. Oh, here he is.
Oh, isn't he the cutest thing you've ever seen?
And this is his red sweater he got for Christmas. So
he loves it.
Very festive.
He loves it.
Would you like to say anything?
Do you want to do the sign off, O2?
Would you like to do the sign off? I'll tell you what, folks. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to the podcast, and leave a comment if you'd like. Let us know. Let us know what you think. What are your goals for 2025? Just comment anything. We love the engagement.
Join our community.
Join it. But if you're watching us, you're loving this right now. If you're watching us on YouTube, like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that bell button because we are putting out episodes and other content all the time.
All the time.
You're going to want to check it out.
Until next time, have a great day.
Bye-bye.